that when we presented those other studios with here's our schedule, here's our budget, here's what we're looking for quality-wise, most of them ran screaming, quite honestly.
Yeah,
Polygon were the ones who stayed, forgot to step backwards or whatever you're supposed to do, and said, it's going to be hard, but we think we can do it, and we think we understand what you want. And
heroic.
They really did. I mean,
I think our most asked question was, do they need to transform?
Yes.
That was what most studios came back with.
Because they were okay with them as bots and vehicles, but not if they had to actually create the transformation.
Really?
And again, we're talking about a 5-part miniseries we were building to, so we needed to have all 5 of those parts delivered 5 weeks in a row. That is the equivalent of a long feature that we did in about a year. So that's pretty... the one other thing I'll say about Polygon is, if I remember correctly, when we learned about the earthquake, I don't even think we had time to send them the email saying, oh my gosh, are you okay? What's going on? And there was an email waiting for us saying, we may miss a deadline.
We're sorry.
We're sorry.
Wow.
Literally.
They're heroes. They're really.
So what's the lead time work like? Are you guys months or weeks ahead of them? Are you designing down to the last minute and things are being rendered up to like right before it goes out to the...
Well, traditionally you do kind of work split. You work, everybody in the US does all their work, and you put it in a box, you send it to whatever studio you're working with. But for this project, I think the storylines are so complex and the designs need to be thought through. We actually send them all of our material as soon as we get it. So every outline, we let them weigh in on the outlines. They work with us to kind of tell us what they can and can't accomplish in the animation, or they'll suggest to us what would be really cool. So all along the way, we're constantly sending things daily. So there's about 6 people on our crew that correspond every day, just with information back and forth. So there is a dividing point where we kind of send a whole bunch of work over to them, but we're in constant communication with them.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm talking to them on a daily basis, at least through emails back and forth as we're going through footage.
Every episode, there's about 6 months of work on our side and about 6 months of work on their side. So it's quite a long amount of time just to get one of the episodes out the door.
That's per episode?
But still less time than most studios enjoy on their CG shows.
We know about Jack and the relationship with his mother, but what about Raph and also Miko? Could we ever see any of their home life and their like Miko's interaction with her foster parents and Raph with his parents?
Quite honestly, we would love to. We want to expand our world as much as we can. The tough thing again is, would you rather have Miko's foster parents, or would you have another Autobot, or another Decepticon? That's literally some of the decisions that we have to make. So right now, I think we actually showed you her foster parents just as still images on a cell phone or something like that. Raph, we say it's a big family, we reference, but honestly, if using an off-screen voice for Mom is going to let us build a new Decepticon in Season 2, probably a better place to put our efforts, just because how much time do you want to spend at Raph's house or in the living room? Although I will tell you that you will spend a little time at Raph's house coming up due to a story, for story reasons.
We're definitely still delving in the stories, getting little tidbits of their...
The longer we go, the more assets we have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you're not rendering the humans to transform or anything.
There's something coming, but maybe somewhere.
What? Pretenders?
Copyright trademark right now.
There will be some combo platform.
We're not going to have like a something like we had with Sorry and Animated, where one of the humans isn't a human.
I would say please keep watching.
Miko came off in the last episode like a much more interesting character, where he showed like for the first time a lot of vulnerability, and it just seems like her attraction with sort of her Autobot brothers, especially Bulkhead, is seeming to sort of hide, I don't know, maybe a layer of pain. Is there some sort of feeling of regret or loneliness with Miko, in that he's sort of is she an exchange student? I mean, is she lonely in the U.S.?
I think it's a great question. I think, again, we tend to leave little clues. Also, just good storytelling requires that you dig into characters and find things about them that are more interesting than they are just this one-dimensional thing.
We're going to start doing
should be look, if you were sent to this country, I'm not sure willingly, and you're living with people who you obviously don't really feel the need to go check in with periodically, because you spend a lot of time with the Autobots, and you're choosing to spend a lot of your time with the surrogate family, where maybe for the first time you do feel like people care about you, doesn't that make you a more interesting character? and isn't that more stuff for us to play?
Oh, definitely.
Her birth parent or her birth father is a mad scientist that builds giant robots.
We had that idea.
Now, when you guys are working on like that part of the story and incorporating the family or looking at these kids, how much of that do you also look at the audience? Like, I mean, I'm grown up and I'm watching this, but if I was a parent or a kid, I'd be like, I don't want to hang out with my family. I want to hang out with robots. So is there ever a time where it's like, maybe this isn't the right kind of message to send? Or
I think for us, obviously episode to episode we pay attention to balance, but we always are kind of looking longer term. So I feel like if we spend a little bit of a couple of episodes dealing with family stuff just to humanize these characters, the overall whole is still heavily bot-centric.
And there's always repercussions to their actions that we're building to.
And where we started was you wanted to reflect people's lives, and so people have parents. So we don't go to parents because we have to have parents, because it's an actual part of your life, be it an obstacle or be it a benefit. So we wanted to feel real, and that's why we use certain elements or certain characters, not because we feel like I really want mom and dad to be able to sit down and watch this together, even though that's a nice benefit. But we all have, hopefully, parents. You do too, I hope. So you want to use the stuff that's real and not just exclude it or include it just because you're trying to reach some demographic. You want to be kind of telling your own stories.
Again, when we started, I remember very early on in the process, for example, Raph, his personality is, we always said he came from a large family. He was probably a little ignored at home, didn't get a lot of attention, was the last kid to speak up. When we first met him in the series, he actually tended to be very shy and didn't talk a lot. If you've watched over time and as the series continues, he's actually come out of his shell a little bit thanks to his partner, and he's become the voice of the one who can't speak. And as a result, found his own voice as well. And that obviously was something we wanted to do from the beginning.
You want a weird behind-the-scenes thing?
Yeah.
We named him and sort of designed him after Raffi.
It's true. He's right
sitting right behind you.
Take a picture. Just another couple questions, guys, before we swap.
Will we hear?
there's a resemblance.
Right?
I couldn't believe it when I found out that Adam Baldwin was playing Breakdown. How did he get involved?
We'd used him before.
Yeah, the Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan. There's a lot of people we've used before who've come back around, Clancy Brown, and et cetera, et cetera. So, Kevin Michael Richardson.
People like to work with his team.
And we like to work with, again, you want to try to create a surrogate family. You spend a lot of time with these people, so you want to try to pick people that you actually look forward to hanging out with.
Now, on the opposite end of that question,
Who do we not like?
do you guys look? Oh no, I'm sorry. Getting back to the family stuff.
Who have you passed on?
How do you guys kind of design a good fantasy part for kids? I mean, all of us are interested in the Transformers, and we project a heck of a lot. You could show like one guy in the background for 1 second, and all of the adult fan sites would light up trying to guess who that is. But the kids have to have their element too, who aren't as familiar with these things. How do you guys?
But that balancing act was the hardest thing to pull off, I think, and I think we've done a pretty good job. And as far as we have to be aware of the fact that there's 25 years worth of fans and of certain truths of mythology. Conversely, we have to bring brand new people into this world because if we only service the fans, it's actually not enough for a new broadcast network. Not to mention that I think the goal for all of us in some way is to be able to sit down with our own kids and introduce them to this thing that we loved. So that was definitely the hardest balancing act is telling stories that will not bore adults, but keeping the core emotional part of that story simple enough that even younger viewers can come to it. And that's why I think Dwayne Capizzi and that group have done amazing. And Marcia Griffin, Steve Melching, it really is finding a way in and a clean enough, I got to get from A to B to C for younger viewers, but then layering it with some of the emotional stuff of why does Raph act the way he does, or what is going on in RC's life, what happened to her in the past, and how
And we never dumb down the story.
Ever.
It's like with my daughter, who's 8 years old, when we watch a show, yeah, there's some parts I might have to explain with her, but it opens up a dialogue with me and my kid, and we're enjoying it because there's things she likes, there's things I like.
And they understand so much. Like I think partially because they've been raised now on media to such a degree, it's so ever present. Their knowledge of film language, their knowledge of visual storytelling is 10 times what it was when we were kids. And it's both amazing and horrifying.
And is that a little bit why Raph is kind of this super techno geek for at his age?
As a starting point, in both the movies and the show, one of the reasons we go through the point of view of young people is not because we're trying to appeal to them. It's because story-wise, it occurs to us that the people who might be the most open to a giant sentient robot actually being an alien would be children. They are most open to the idea of potentially alien life, of potentially artificial intelligence, and so that is something that we occurred to us would be why Autobots might choose children as people they would reveal themselves to first, and that's the case in the first movie and again in the show, where they're going to be less fearful and more open to accepting them as people and therefore helping them. And that's not just because we're trying to appeal to children. That happens to be what we think might be an actual story element if it were real. And so that naturally, again, we don't include parents just because we want to appeal to parents. We include parents because that's part of the story. We don't include children because we just want to include children. We include children because we think it's an organic way for Transformers to interact with humanity. And when you can do that, it's part of the story, and then it happens to appeal to kids or to parents, then you're winning, you know. Winning? You're winning.
Did you want to ask one more?
Yeah, just one more. Down the road, can we actually get Bumblebee an actual voice? I mean,
Oh man, age-old debate.
sort of tired of that
What do you guys think?
R2D2 type thing.
Again, depending on how long we get to do this, we do have designs on both showing you why he doesn't speak and perhaps
But
actually
couldn't he
solve-
adopt like a voice from the internet, like Cartman? Wait!
I mean, even in the flashbacks where he's on Cybertron and he's fighting alongside the Autobots and
He did speak once with Megatron.
I hate the Autobots.
When Megatron was in his brain, he did speak.
I hate those Decepticons so very much.
did you see those blow
No.
South Park balloons up?
I haven't walked the floor. I
Does that
can
make,
right here.
No, they're
does that make
outside.
Cliff Jumper or Kenny?
Yeah. Yes. You killed Cliff Jumper. That's great.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all till all are one.